Hi, it's time for us to meet again on video, and I wanted to make some comments based on the comments you made in the discussion boards and some things you've struggled with as a group, not just individually, and also based on some of the information that I've gotten from your emails. So again, I'm encouraging with any questions, please feel free to email. You are not bothering me, and some people are apologizing, but this is part of having an online course. Again, you're also welcome to come and meet with me if you'd like, or talk to me on the phone. But I'd like to address a few topics that we're seeing kind of recurring. I wanted to talk about Mladinov's book and what I'd like to gain from it. I think Mladinov's book is very good at talking about how this domain of thinking about probability and statistics really developed over time. So be patient with it a little bit. And the learning that I really want you to have from it is the learning that that is really important to keep in inquiry, and that is that there's a bias in all of us towards making up explanations and against randomness. We really feel uncomfortable with randomness, and we really feel comfortable with certainty. So we'd like to know the things that A will lead to B, and we're really uncomfortable with A does not necessarily lead to B, and we're even less comfortable with A sometimes lead to B, but sometimes not. But that's seems to be how the real world works. That is, if I take my kid to the museum, he's likely to like art more, but there's a certain chance that says he might actually hate art because he can remember that every Saturday I dragged him to the museum. So we can't be always sure of the outcomes of even actions that are linked. We definitely can't be sure of actions that are less linked. We look for patterns, and again, that can be detrimental because sometimes and often in life, there's a certain amount of randomness. I don't mean to say that education is all about random and we can just sit there and hope that things will turn out okay. There is such a thing as learning, but randomness rules. And when we think about inquiry, and that's what I want you to think about, not about your instruction, although that's interesting all on its own, but about randomness. And the pattern, for example, the Tversky example with Air Force instructors who were yelling and then they were nice and everything regressed to the mean. His point is not that yelling works or doesn't work, although Tversky has made that point rather well. But actually, the point of the discussion is that we are actually fairly bad at assuming causality, and we need to check against our biases, and we need to train ourselves to ask, is there a reason to think that this happened by design and there's something unusual going here that really contributed, or is it just chance? Because everything, as rare as it might be, may happen by chance. So all we can say is this likely to have happened by chance, or is there a pattern here that comes from somewhere else? And even then, the somewhere else can be something that is not exactly what we did, like in that yelling example, and giving positive oral comments. Neither has caused the effect. Something else caused the effect, the regression. So we need to guard against our bias for explanation. We need to guard against having an alternative explanation viable. That's the most important thing that I want you to gain from that reading and that development of thinking that seems to be somehow against the grain. So we're, as humans, we're programmed to make meaning, and we do that even when there is no meaning. And that in research, in life, that helps. In research, that can be a deterrent from seeing things as they are. So a lot of analysis, especially quantitative analysis, but I would argue qualitative as well, is really focused on making sure we're not just capturing chance, but we're actually capturing something meaningful. And we do that by going deeper. We do that by sampling. We do that by getting multiple opportunities to examine a phenomena, but that's important. As we go with terms, I think that having a basic vocabulary to deal with quantitative and qualitative and mixed methods and things like that is very, very important. But you need to leave this class with really overall not more than 10 to 20 terms in total that you really remember for a long time. Remember, those books are available out there you can get them. Only the core concepts around probability, around the core concepts around different kinds of research and different approaches are needed to make sure that you actually have a grasp of what's going on. And I'm sorry I had to press the OK button on the screen. There's a number of questions that came up around the same thing, and that is, can I ask a different question? Now that I've read, do I need to change my question? Can I ask something different? I found that I don't like this area. Maybe I want to ask it from a different direction. And the answer is absolutely yes. In inquiry, especially in the first phases of inquiry, we are constantly reframing. We are constantly asking somewhat different questions. I thought I was interested in this, now I'm interested in that. That's perfectly fine. That's what I want you to discover based on interaction with what actually other people have created. You can say, you know what, I asked the question, turns out we know the answer. There are 20 studies on this. It's been settled. I want to move beyond that. And the next question is, or I think that these studies are too specific and I want to actually ask a question before that. What matters? And somebody asked about motivation and how do we motivate kids, but then said, you know what, I'm wondering about what happens in general. Why are kids getting unmotivated in secondary English classes about reading, where they seem to be very motivated in elementary? Great question. And that's probably a good question to ask before you move into what can change that. So really I see it as an interactive process. There are no right or wrong questions, and you can take wrong turns and you can get to a dead end, or you can get to a place where you want to circle back to where you started, or you want to make a left turn and go in a different direction. That's all fine as long as you do that not just on a whim and it's like I woke up this morning and wanted something different, but from thinking about that domain and from reading about that domain. Those are great decisions to make, and I want you to make them. My focus is not on giving you the right grade. It's not on giving you the points and you answering the questions I would like. I would like you to discover what are the questions you want to ask. So don't worry as much about getting it correct, and really focus on growing your thinking and growing your understanding of the field and asking really good questions, even if they're risky. That's worth it. Because this is not really about asking what you already know, but on things you don't know. So growth is expected, and wrong turns are expected as well. So I try to give feedback on assignments, and I'm attending to the second and third assignment this week. So I want you to pick up on my comments more than on a specific grade, because I think you'll do just fine if you do the work and really focus on where you're at and getting to the questions you want to define, and out of that the study you would like to do. And I would like to give you the feedback that would get you there more than the grade that would get you there. And so I want you to think about this class less as a way to think about your teaching and more as a way to open up questions about inquiry itself and the things I'd like to find out. And eventually it'll make this connection to teaching, but not everything is linked to teaching. And I know that our instinct as teachers, whatever we read, is to immediately see how it impacts our world. And it's fine. And we are actually interested in those comments as well. But sometimes, like in the randomness book, Mladinov's book, you want to think beyond just teaching in a classroom and seeing what does that mean for my classroom, and more into how do we interpret the patterns we see in the world and how do we make sense out of them. So again, pick up a few terms from every chapter. Don't get overwhelmed by them. We need only the big ones. Everything else is less important. The second thing is wrong turns and redos and reframing is good. That's what you want to see. I'll be very worried if you started and ended up with exactly the same thing. Some people are focused that way, but I'm perfectly fine with you finding different questions or related questions or more specific questions as time goes on. That'll be fantastic. And you're not wedded to these ideas. I don't expect you, if you're doing your project or your thesis in a year, to necessarily do this about this. It can be helpful, but what I'm trying to teach you here is ways of thinking and ways of exploring the domain you're interested in. And so we focused on learning and not on grading, and definitely not on sticking with something even though you're not interested anymore or you don't think that's as valid as something else. Please make those changes, explain them, make sure you communicate them well, but don't hesitate and do that. Don't hesitate and contact me to talk, and I hope to create another video by the end of this week, and I'll see you online. Bye.